Last week, I embarked on a 4-day road trip to visit a collection of different amusement parks set along the southern shore of Lake Erie, all of which I was seeing for the very first time. In part 1 of this series, I visited the Cleveland Crushers Summer Carnival and spent a day and a half at Cedar Point, picking up 17 new coaster credits along the way. In part 2, I'm heading east to check out Waldameer in Erie, PA, Niagara Amusement Park just outside of Buffalo on Grand Island, and Six Flags Darien Lake. After 2 extremely hot, 20,000 plus step days at Cedar Point, I allowed myself to sleep in and get a late start on my way to Erie, PA. I was a bit nervous, because getting to Waldameer mid-afternoon could mean a full parking lot and long waits. However, my days spent at the gigantic Cedar Point had unfairly influenced my expectations. Any charm that I felt was lacking in my previous 2 days was more than made up for almost the moment I pulled into the parking lot. Parking at Waldameer is free, which starts the day off on a really positive note. Not just that, but an all-day ride ticket is only $40. Once through the gates, I was met with a train station and a wooded picnic pavilion area filled with families setting up for a full day of fun at the park. It was so quaint, so welcoming, and I had this irremovable smile on my face that didn't really leave until I was headed back to my car. The first major ride that you pass is Comet, a PTC wooden coaster from 1951. After the first drop and turnaround, I immediately knew what kind of care Waldameer puts into their attractions, as it was smooth and just downright fun. A few little pops of airtime here and there. It's not a speed machine, but it does what it does well. After that, it was time for the coaster that put Waldameer on the map. The 2008 Gravity Group wooden coaster, Ravine Flyer 2. This ride is unhinged. It is relentless, it is intense, out of control in all of the best ways. After a 118-foot drop down into, well, a ravine, you fly through the layout. I guess it's a good name. The first time that I pulled back into the station, I genuinely had no idea what had just happened. The ride feels like it never slows down a single mile per hour, like the almost 60 mile per hour speed that you hit at the bottom of the first drop carries through the entire coaster. It uses terrain in such an interesting way that maximizes every twist and turn and drop along its nearly 3,000 feet of track. I rerode this beast 4 times until I started to feel that slight wooden coaster headache creeping in, and I quit while I was ahead. What an incredible experience that I would recommend anyone heading through the Erie area take the time to visit. To wind down, I had a train haul to myself on Ravine Flyer 3, the kiddie coaster next door. I really enjoyed the soundtrack to this ride, which cycled from What's This from Nightmare Before Christmas to Yo-Ho from Pirates of the Caribbean while I was in the area. Just some random Disney atmosphere to beef up your kids' ride. Why not? From there, it was time for my favorite part of any regional park. Some weird dark rides. Wacky Shack is an absolutely delightful Bill Tracy dark ride from 1970. It's a little single cart that twists and turns through show scenes and optical illusions. A particularly charming feature is that rather than doors opening for you as you pass, the ride car just constantly bangs through swinging doors from room to room. Like, it almost left me wondering how often they have to change those hinges to keep them from just getting smashed off the wall every day. Pirates Cove is a walkthrough that might as well be a dark ride itself, featuring fun, campy little set pieces that take you through a pirate's hideout with some disorienting effects along the way. With the Maurer Spinner Steel Dragon down for maintenance, I finished my coaster creds for the day with Whirlwind, an SBF spinner. With 2 little kids on the other side of my car, we were pretty evenly balanced and didn't do a whole lot of spinning, but it was fine for what it was. I decided to take the Sky Ride back to the front of the park, only to realize when approaching the end that it actually does a round trip. That was no problem though. It gave me extra time to just sit back and enjoy the beautiful views of the park and out over Lake Erie. And stopping at the gift shop on my way out, I noticed something that I wish more parks did. there was so much ride-specific merch. And we're not talking just like the big ones, like Ravine Flyer and Comet. They had entire store sections based on the smaller attractions like Wacky Shack. I was so appreciative of that. More parks would be well served to pay homage to their smaller, much-beloved attractions. Waldameer deserves all of the love that I've seen it get, and honestly, probably deserves a bit more. They seem to be doing absolutely everything right. You can tell that every inch of the park is cared for and loved. I can't wait to make this a more regular stop when on my way to visit family in Buffalo, if for no other reason than to get my world rocked by Ravine Flyer. Day 4. Earlier I mentioned needing to be a bit flexible, and here's where that comes into play. When I made plans for this trip a month earlier, the Niagara Amusement Park website listed the day I would be visiting, a Wednesday, as a day that they would be open. Unfortunately, at some point between then and my visit, the schedule was changed and Wednesday was taken off of the park calendar. Someone I spoke to who visits often mentioned that the park always lists more days when the calendar is first released in an effort to support season pass sales. And then they trim it down to mostly weekends until peak season once the dates get closer. It's an unfortunate practice. Definitely something to pay attention to if you're planning on visiting. Thankfully, I have the aforementioned family in Buffalo that I planned to stay with anyway, so I was able to still make the 2.5-hour drive north toward the park and push my visit to another day until they were open. Niagara Amusement Park is a place that needs a lot of work, but also a place that has a lot to offer. IB Parks and Amusement acquired the property in 2021, which had been closed, with the rides put up for sale by the previous owners. Honestly, it's a pretty rare and commendable story for a park to come back from the dead like this. The years of neglect do show, as parts of the park, especially the far corners, seem slightly barren and worn down. However, other sections of the park have had some obvious care put into them to try and establish something special. Once again, free parking is a huge plus to start your day. Once you pass through the actual gates, there's a really understated and pleasant entry plaza there to greet you, with water features and a train station. Your natural inclination is to follow the pathway towards Western Town, and that would be the correct choice. Western Town is by far the most impressive and engaging portion of the park. In fact, I would go as far to say this was the most immersive area of any park that I visited on this whole trip. We stopped into the main gift shop to take a look at the merch, and we were greeted by a shopkeeper who stayed 100% in character, not just during our conversation, but every time we just randomly saw her throughout our visit. She also tipped us off that word around town is there might be a robbery in the next few minutes. We asked her just like as an employee of the park for more information to kind of clarify what she meant, but her commitment to character prevented her from really telling us if there was a show or something going on, which I commend and I love. So we stuck around for a few minutes, and sure enough, 3 bandits ran into her store and held her up, only to get into a shootout with the local sheriff. I mean, what a greeting! It was literally like 30 seconds long and just happened without any warning from the park. I could not have been more pleased with our first few minutes at Niagara Amusement Park. The first major ride that we saw was Silver Comet, a CCI wooden coaster with a unique layout. It's a long ride, nearly 3,000 feet of track, and runs very smoothly considering what the park has been through in the past decade. They must have done some extensive upkeep on this ride and getting the park back on its feet. I hope that work is rewarded by visitors, because this was my second favorite Woody from the whole trip, and it's very hard to compete with Ravine Flyer, so that's high praise. A standout moment is at the top of the lift hill, where your train is sort of faced towards this view of Lake Erie and Niagara Falls. It's a really cool ride feature. Next was the Serpent, an SDC Galaxy that actually reminded me a lot of the Cyclone from the Crushers Carnival. It looked a little janky from the outside, but had a super enthusiastic operator who really created a memorable experience for us. It rode pretty smooth and had a triple helix down that packed some serious G-forces. The whole morning, we kept passing by this unbelievable facade for the Flying Witch, a Pinfari dark ride, which, unfortunately, was having some work done and it wasn't open. The absurdity of this facade has to be seen to be believed. Just demons and dragons, and once again, I am not accusing Universal Creative of theft, but Burning Blade, anyone? Finally, though, the gates thankfully opened and we boarded this delightfully campy haunted house attraction, featuring tons of spooky scenes and a decent number of simple animatronics. This is my dream ride. Charmingly chintzy, but with enough effort to show that it does require upkeep and care to keep it running. If I could just grab a beer and a pretzel and lap this for like an hour, I'd be a very happy man. And yes, I did buy a souvenir cup for it later. The final aspect of this park that I want to applaud is the live entertainment. I already mentioned the pop-up robbery that we encountered earlier, but they also put on a full 15-minute stunt show right in the middle of Western Town multiple times a day. I'm talking robbers falling off the rooftops, blank gunshots that will blow your eardrums out, that type of stunt show. And the public isn't really blocked off from it. You can still kind of move about the land while it happens. Not just that, but once a day they also do a train heist performance on the Iron Horse train, the transport ride that goes around the park. I wish we could have stuck around to check out the train heist, but the hours were ticking by and the tour must go on. So for now, our first visit to Niagara Amusement Park had to come to an end. They still have a long way to go if they want to become a destination for enthusiasts and not just a local park. But looking at what they're doing with Western Town, I'm left with optimism that they might be in good hands to get the job done. 45 minutes down the road, we approach Six Flags Darien Lake, and we're once again able to park and enter for free with our park passport. After visiting other Six Flags locations around the country, I enjoyed that the Main Street area of the entrance plaza took on more of a nautical vibe than I was used to. It was a breath of fresh air. The park as a whole I found to be very well maintained and pretty aesthetically pleasing. There's lots of nice lookouts over water and little areas away from the crowded thoroughfares to tuck in and relax. My first priority was Tantrum, a compact Gerstlauer Eurofighter with a good reputation, and it did not disappoint. This ride is very short. Very, very short, running about a minute, including the lift hill, but the experience that you do have on the ride is very satisfying. It packs in tons of inversions and smooth transitions. It makes the most of its small footprint. I really wish it was 2 or 3 times longer, but it was a fantastic way to start the day. While riding that high, I hopped on Mind Eraser next door. The same Vekoma SLC that you can find at most Six Flags parks, and it was a Vekoma SLC. I will say, it wasn't any more uncomfortable than other SLCs I've been on, so at least it's as well maintained as it can be. Following the circle around the park, I headed to Viper, an Aero Looper from 1981. As far as old Aeros go, this was pretty great. I found it way more enjoyable than either of the traditional Aero coasters at Cedar Point. As a bonus for Viper, I really enjoyed that you could see a haunt maze hiding in the trees below the ride. After getting off, I went around to the front, and sure enough, there was a permanent haunt facade for Jack Pallett's Scarecrow Row set up and just waiting for the fall to blow in. I love seeing little traces of spooky season sprinkled throughout parks. On that note, in the back of the park, there was a gigantic show building with a very impressive permanent spooky facade built onto the front of it. It looks like some warehouse that opens up for their haunt event. I felt like Eric Andre at the fence shaking it and screaming, "Let me in." I was desperate to see what was in there. Maybe someone from the Darien Lake community can fill me in on what happens in this building come September. Heading around the lake, I got onto Moto Coaster. While not as impressive as Ride of Steel or Tantrum, this might be my favorite ride at the park. Why don't more places have these? It takes up such a little footprint, but it provides such a unique ride experience. Not just that, it's really comfortable, especially considering the unique seating arrangement. If you've never done one, think Flight of Passage, but on a roller coaster. Also, it being almost 20 years old, it was just fun. Whipping around, tight turns on a motorcycle, that's a winning formula. Just ask Hagrid. From there, I continued along the path next door to the Vekoma Boomerang. Oh wait, no I didn't. My biggest gripe of this whole park is directed towards whoever made the call to not connect the pathway around the lake. What were they thinking? I've never been to a park that has a large lake as its centerpiece that simply decided to make a C-shaped path, going 30 feet from being a full circuit but not finishing it. An employee told me that it was something to do with the layout of the KOA campground on that side of the park, meaning they couldn't extend the path out any further, but you gotta figure that out, Darien Lake. I don't mind walking, but it just makes no sense. Anyway, Boomerang was good. It was just like the 50 plus other boomerangs around the world. No matter how many you do, though, that backwards loop always provides excellent forces. This ride also brought something to my attention. Between this, the Old Arrow, the SLC, I found very little headbanging going on throughout this park. Darien Lake seems to be doing a really nice job upkeeping these rides that have a tendency to get pretty rough as they get older. The Predator is a very two-faced Din wooden coaster. There were portions where the track has been maintained and updated that were smooth and really enjoyable, but there were also parts of the track that were legitimately the most uncomfortable I've ever been on a ride. You could see beams physically shifting and the train car would violently rattle over turns. The middle section is excellent and really comfortable, but I will never do this again unless the entire track gets that treatment. Finally, Ride of Steel was waiting to close out the day and the trip. As expected, it's an excellent ride. Between this and the Ride of Steel at my local Six Flags America, they're both fantastic, but I actually think DC has a slightly more comfortable ride. Maybe it's the new trains that they just got, or maybe that it's a year younger, but the rattle just felt a little more pronounced at Darien Lake. I was paired with a young man who was doing his first ever coaster. Ever, not just like first ever big coaster. And I sort of coached him through what to expect. I had him sit on the right side of the train so that he had the training wheels of the emergency stairs next to him. I sort of pointed out the layout and gave him tips as we waited for the train and went up the lift hill to kind of keep his mind off of things. I was happy to see that he had a great time. Those hands finally went up about halfway through the ride, and just like that, a doozy was born. Being a pretty slow day, this and Tantrum were the only two rides commanding any kind of wait, and unfortunately, this revealed a glaring issue at the park, that being ride operations. Every ride was running single trains, and on Ride of Steel, they were only dispatching once every 5-6 minutes, maybe longer. So even though I got in line with only 4 cars of people ahead of me in my row, I waited over a half hour to board. In a day of mostly positives, this is definitely a need for improvement. With Superman checked off, it was time to grab a local beer at the Busted Barrel Saloon and reflect on the past week. This was the first time I'd ever attempted a multi-day, multi-park road trip. Being the only theme park psycho in my family, shout out For Your Amusement Podcast, my vacations are usually majority, quote-unquote, normal vacations, with a theme park added on here or there. You know, let's go to Paris for a week and then spend a day at Disneyland Paris. Let's hike in the Smokies for 3 or 4 days and then go check out Dollywood, that sort of thing. So I commend anyone that takes on trips like this regularly. It feels like a bit of an endurance challenge, not from the walking or the cardio, but from the rides themselves and the physical toll that it takes on your body. My goal was to shoot for 30 coasters in 4 days, and thankfully, I was able to hit that mark while exploring a diverse catalog of parks along the way. Not just that, but due to my Six Flags Park passport and some free parking, my total cost for the parks themselves was under $100. From carnivals, to local parks, to regional parks, to the coaster capital of the world, this trip had a little bit of everything. When you're able to see such a vast sample size over such a short period of time, it really helps you appreciate the little things that make theme parks special. Among the unforgettable ride experiences like Ravine Flyer or Steel Vengeance, I'll look back just as fondly on my interactions with the merch store worker from Western Town, who didn't need to be giving it her all with the character work, but really went above and beyond to make our day special. The employee who saw my Jurassic Park shirt and talked with my wife and I for 20 minutes about his love for Spielberg, showing each other pictures of our matching Jaws Quint and Hooper couple costumes from this past Halloween. We both had done it. And the woman at the carnival who was so proud of the company that her sister had built. Amusement parks and theme parks mean different things to different people. And more than anything, I'll come away from this trip with a better understanding of that. Someone out there loves every park that you've been to, no matter how big or small. And looking for those things can be what makes you fall in love with them too. This has been Eric from Park Rovers. Thanks for watching.